Hello, 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 everyone. Christina here from MassCell 360. Excited to bring some fresh new content to you today. We are concluding Mold Month here at MassCell 360. We've been talking about mold all month long. We've had some incredible special guests, one of which today is Michael Schrantz. You guys know him. He's one of our favorites around here. He's with Environmental Analytics. We've had Dr. Neil Nathan with us. We've had our very own Kimberly with us. I mean, it has just been a blast having so many different guests with us live, just sharing their stories, their expertise, and most importantly, how to navigate mold, right? And deal with that mold toxicity and see transformation and change in their health. So in keeping with that, we're going to get right into it today. And let me just go ahead and knock out a couple of these fun disclaimer slides for you. This presentation is for informational and educational purposes. It's not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illnesses. Be sure to discuss any health recommendations with your healthcare provider. And as a quick reminder, all content in this presentation is copyright MassCell 360. It's for your personal and non-commercial use only. So don't duplicate or any of those things. But as always, we love when you share it on social media. So go ahead and do that now. And there's also just a quick reminder on our affiliate program here. So we do share links, like we'll definitely share a couple today that will you'll also see on our website or during a presentation. And it does mean that we do take a very small commission, typically if you purchase through those links. But just know they're all recommended products. They're things we love, we personally use at the MassCell 360 practice, or even in our supplement store. Know that nothing that you purchase through an affiliate link actually costs you extra. It doesn't work that way on our side of things, but the commissions that we do receive go to support the MCAS Monday newsletters, our website, ongoing research, and gosh, so much more going on behind the scenes over here. So we are excited to get into it today. We're going to kind of shift up the format just a little bit. So first off, who's tuning in and where are you tuning in from? I'm excited to see who's joining us from our international community today. I see we've got Deborah. Hi, Deborah. We always love when you're here, joining us from San Diego. Hi, fellow Michigander. I see you, Kelly, joining us today. Delighted to have you. You guys let us know where you're tuning in from. Maureen's here from Massachusetts. Thank you. Thank you. It's always a delight to see you be here with us today. And as we've promised, we will be here for you. Well, as a quick reminder, since this will be a little bit longer of a call today and discussion today with Michael, because he was willing to answer all the amazing questions that you guys had. Now, maybe, well, I said all, but let's just say we picked I think it was 7 questions out of all the ones that you guys submitted on Facebook. And so he decided to go into detail on each and every one of those. And so we're going to go through those today, but I wanted to remind you, we are still doing our giveaway today. Okay. So if you would like to be a part of the giveaway and have the chance to win our Mold Precision Masterclass course, you have to stay to the very end and we will pick one winner and we'll give away the basic level of our mold course live. Okay. And so all you have to do to kind of enter for the chance to win is be here and comment. That's it. You guys can do that. And I see all of, so someone like Patricia, who's joining us from Connecticut, Caroline, hi, our first international guest today, joining us from Sweden. We've, anytime you comment, you are entered into the mix for the chance to win. So we always love when you guys show up and support and engage, and we want to reward you for that, right? So that'll be really fun. We'll give that away at the very end of the call. Of course, this is live right now, but it is recorded and available for a replay. So if this is too long and you're just watching on your lunch break or you need to go take a walk, we totally understand. Go ahead and do that. You can always come back and watch this later. We are going to leave this live recording up for a while for you guys to enjoy and listen to over and over and over again, because there's so much good stuff coming. Okay. And then also, because I know that not all of you are going to have a chance to listen to the very end or stay with us to the very end, I wanted to let you know, first off, check your inboxes because you're going to get an email about this if you're on our newsletter. But we have heard from you guys that you really wanted to dive a little deeper into the topic of mold. We've actually seen that some of our community have been kind of clamoring behind the scenes for the advanced level version of our course compared to the basic level. We do offer 2 levels. And so as part of that, we know that budgets are tight right now. And so we wanted to just do something a little extra special for you and give you an extra $50 off off our already super discounted version of this course. So just to give you guys an idea, it's normally like $649. We already took $150 off. We're taking an extra 50 off. You just have to use coupon code MOLD50 when you check out, okay? So if you've been sitting on the fence about getting the mold course, I want you to know this is my promise to you as being part of the marketing team over here. We're not going to run a more like discounted promotion over the holiday season. This is it, okay? So this is the best you're going to get. We wanted to be extra generous as we've been really the last couple of months here, and will continue to be. So this is where you can get it and take advantage of that. Okay, so again, extra $50 off the advanced level only. And that's if you purchase before midnight, because our promotion ends tonight for our mold course and all the discounts. So wanted to just let you in on that. And so if you are ready for the next step and you want to take a step into learning more about how to test your body, test your home, and safely detox from mold using our method, this is the course to do it. It is a proven process that we've done over and over again, hundreds of mystery cases that have seen breakthrough from all over the country. So if you've been thinking about it and you want to kind of walk through a DIY process, this is a great opportunity to do, and or in alignment with your practitioner, either at our clinic or with one that you currently work with. Okay, so with that being said, I just wanted to kind of let you know what we're going to talk about, today, just like normal. So talking about mold toxicity, stabilization, that kind of process. We're going to talk about mold exposure, and then Michael's going to be answering your questions. And for those of you unfamiliar with Michael, and I'll explain this as we hop into the interview here, he is the founder and operator of Environmental Analytics. I know we had talked about him maybe popping in live today in the chat as well. So just know that he'll be keeping an eye out on the conversations today. Him or his team might pop in and answer questions. But no matter what, you can go to his website, environmentalanalytics.net. And you can go ahead and send him an email. You can book a virtual session with him and he'll explain a little bit more on that. But I just want you to know, Michael's a one of a kind, and he's one of the good ones out there. And he has been a part of over 4,300 different projects all over the globe. This is someone that knows this world inside and out. He also knows what it's like to deal with chronic illness and deal with some of the things that you right here, our community, deal with. And so I hope as you listen to this conversation I had with him today, you can hear his heart. You, of course, will receive his expertise and his wisdom. And I really hope that it blesses you guys today. So thanks for joining us. I did want to let you know that we're not going to be answering any questions live today, like from Michael, in addition to the pre-submitted ones, but you're always welcome to leave them below in the comments, and we'll see if he can pop in and answer any of your live questions a little bit later. We'll see if we can get to those. And if not, we'll have him back on the show. Don't worry. You can always chime in later. All right. Awesome. I think that's it. So again, giveaway at the very end. So stick with us. This is going to be a little bit longer of an interview than normal for us, but you can always hop off, hop back on, but be sure to stay to the end if you can, so you can be entered in for the chance to win that awesome course giveaway. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let me go ahead and pull everything up and we will get into it. Well, hello, everyone. Christina here from MassCell 360. I am so excited about this conversation today. This is one of our favorite experts and one of our favorite guides by the side, if you will, in the realm of mold and environmental mold. And we've got our special guest, Michael Schrantz, with us today from Environmental Analytics. And he's going to be talking about how to keep mold away. These are 3 practical tips everyone needs to know. And as part of sharing tips, if you will, those tips are going to be all included by answering some of your top questions. I know we originally said we were going to just answer 3, but you guys have responded with so many great questions, some that we can answer live here today, and some that you'll need to follow up with Michael directly and ask him in a future call. But we're going to go through those questions. We're going to take some time with him and learn from him. So let's get right into it. So Michael Schrantz, for those of you that aren't familiar, he's a CIEC, a CMI, and a BPI. BAEIP. And he's one of the board members of the, oh gosh, I always say this wrong, an ISEAI. And he's the founder of his company, Environmental Analytics. It's really a consulting company that helps so many different people in the residential, commercial, and even the medical sectors be able to navigate the topic of mold, right? That's what it's all about, and ensuring that there's environmental quality. He's worked with over 4,600 projects all over the world. Gosh, I can only imagine what his experience has been like. So we're going to bring him to the stage and have him share with us a little bit more today. So Michael, we're delighted to have you today. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Christina, pleasure to be here and absolutely loved our pre-game conversation. So happy to get right to it.
I know we had so much fun. I'm sure that our community here, our MassL 360 community, would have loved to be like the fly on the wall, listening in to all the fun things we were talking about, all the real talk. But I have no doubt you're going to bring some of that real talk today, that honesty, that authenticity, even that vulnerability, about this topic, because so many of our community members, even our own team members, they just hear the word mold and they feel a little triggered. They feel like a little like, oh gosh, I've got to think about that and navigate that. We've been talking about things as part of this entire mold month, if you will, here at MassL 360. And so I feel like we've been kind of in some ways like poking the bear, stirring the pot, whatever analogy you want to use. And I think a good place for us to start today would actually be just to hear from you as an expert in this space. How do you navigate every single day showing up and having to deal with this very real topic that is both visible and invisible in our daily world and life?
Tough question, because it's a good question.
I'm preparing you for that question. I got you on that one.
You did. The first thing that came to mind, and I know we all have our own journeys, our own beliefs, our own system. I respect that. I really do. I have a lot of friends who just have different ways of thinking, faith. But for me, it's faith. I've done a lot of, even my own journey as a professional, as a patient, having CIRS myself, and going through a lot of it. I really, it's a roller coaster ride. And if you are somebody who is a touchy feeler type, connect with everyone's energy, which is the way I am, that can be a blessing in certain applications, but it can also be, I guess the term is curse, because you get sucked into so many people's opinions. And our mind is a powerful tool, and probably the most powerful. And so for me, it's the faith and remembering to live in the present, because when I was going through my own health journey, personally, I wasn't even in the present. I was already thinking about the next thing, the next exposure, and not because I even needed to, not even because I should have, but because I was kind of let my mind kind of go down dark paths and worst cases. And we've all been there. If you've been around long enough in life, you've experienced something. If you're not, you're one of the select few of the entire population. You're the outlier. But most of us go through something traumatic at least one time, if not multiple times in our life. And, I don't know that I was prepared for that. I can tie my shoes. I can go out and hunt if I need to survive. I got myself figured out that way, but I don't know if I was geared for that. I don't think our community is we're so coddled in so many different ways that we forget some of the things about the internal working. So I know we're going to dive into aspects of that with these questions, but for me, how I do it is one day at a time. I remind myself when I'm feeling bad, when I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling stressed. And that's been the late thing for me, is the amount of stress I've been dealing with, is just to slow down, make time for myself, and be thankful for the day, which is really hard to do sometimes, because it's hard to be thankful when you feel like you're being attacked. It's like, what should I be thankful about for that? And it's all about your mind. And my mind is, because there's an opportunity to learn here. Do you want to continue listening to that broken record, or do you want to make a change? And it's not about it being a victim or not being a victim. It's like, some people have the ability to do that. Some people need help. And that's why we're here, is because we're trying to work together to help each other out, because we're a family.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That is so good and so encouraging. And I think, I always love when Beth would just kind of invite gratitude into a moment. She always did that so well, both publicly within our live discussions, but also privately when we would have our team meetings. Like, we would celebrate wins and we'd celebrate things. So I just want to like take this moment for those that are watching live or on the replay. Go ahead and comment in the chat one thing that you are grateful for today. Just go ahead and put that out there. I love being able to just comment some encouraging words, share some of that, because sometimes we need that reminder of hope and encouragement. I've even said recently, Michael, in some of our Facebook lives, like, hey, if you're having a tough day, comment in the chat below, because our community loves to hype each other up. We are there for each other, and we want to make sure that they know they're not alone and that they can get through it. So if they're having a tough day, let us be those people to kind of like lock arms with you and support you. And you can always hop into our inbox if you need to and send us an email at support@masscell360.com. And we're here. Like, Cam and Jamie and so many of us are behind the scenes, and we're checking in with you. So thank you for sharing what you shared. And I know I just brought up Beth, and Beth being someone that you've known for a while in the industry, and you are an expert that she would rave about. We would have, her and I would have different conversations about different guests being on the show, and she'd be like, call Michael or get a hold of Michael. And so I just want to like take a moment to tell you that, it's one thing to be privately acknowledged, right? But I think it's important for me in this moment to just like publicly acknowledge how she celebrated you. And so we just honor you in this space today for being the expert that you are, for helping so many different people that have probably been looked over, gaslit, pushed aside, ignored, and phone calls and emails not responded to, and just say thank you. You've always been willing to answer our questions. You've always been willing to show up for us. And so, guys, go ahead and comment in the chat, send Michael some love and some encouragement today, and just celebrate him, because I know that Beth would be raving about you if she was here right now to do that. So yeah.
Thank you. It's a blessing to be in the position to do that kind of stuff. So I take it as a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, shall we get into some of these good questions?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Awesome. Well, I am going to go ahead and pull these questions on screen. You guys are going to see me go off screen, so that way Michael can just knock out these questions. We want to get through as many as possible for you and get you the resources you need so you can get breakthrough when it comes to keeping mold away and out of your life as much as possible, right?
Right.
All right. Let me pull up these slides real quick here. Okay. Let me come off screen. Oops. There we go. We'll do it that way. Okay. Question 1 is, where do I start if I suspect mold? Where do we start, Michael?
I think it's a two-phase approach, right? The first thing is, if you suspect mold, you should go check with your clinician that you're working with, not because they're going to tell you whether you have mold, but help them be your captain to navigate it. If you suspect mold because you're having a symptom, understandable. Maybe you do have mold. The point is not to dismiss the mold concern or that suspicion. It's to help provide a chart, a path to how to appropriately address it and to what degree. So it's kind of a two-parter. The first one is checking with your clinician, talk to them why you think that you suspect that. The second thing, of course, is going to be more the environmental thing, is where do I start? Honestly, I would start with working with an IEP, an indoor environmental professional, whether it's boots on the ground, whether it's a virtual consultation, maybe budget's an issue, maybe you did live in Podunk, Montana, and you don't have a lot of people. Whatever the reason may be, start with an IEP that you trust, somebody who is literate with mast cell, with functional medicine, who doesn't roll their eyes when you say functional medicine, or low dose exposure concerns, because a lot of the inspectors that are out there, and there's many great ones, they're more traditional inspectors. They're going to do more traditional sampling. They're going to do more traditional interpretation, where the vibe is more like, unless you can prove it, I'm not going to say there's an issue there. And that's another issue that I'm sure the listeners are already thinking, is like, well, I did try to hire somebody, they couldn't find anything, but it's like, I really feel like there's something going on. So I would start there. Now, maybe the other part of this question is, no, where do I look? Well, that's great. Do you have a crawl space? Does it smell musty? Is it damp? Is the access hatch to the crawl space in your master closet on the floor? And maybe some of that stuff, contaminants are coming in. Maybe it's the HVAC system. That's always a big one to talk about. Maybe it's any plumbing source, kitchen sink cabinets, bottom shelf, vanities, behind the refrigerator, if there's like a supply line, washing machine. No, common sources where there would be water or access for water to leak is going to be a lower hanging fruit. The issue, though, is we want to be careful, right? We want somebody who's got an exposure concern to be out there moving and doing remediation, which I know is kind of part of the questions coming up. It's just these are the things that we're thinking about, low hanging fruit of where we might think we would find a source. I would definitely do it if you can with a professional so we can guide you. There's going to be sequencing questions. They're going to be like, oh, let's leave that alone. Or, oh, no, you can take care of that. That's just a little bit of shower mold that you can wipe off. And where we see the biggest issue is confusion and knowing where to draw the line of when is it a homeowner maintenance item versus when is it something that a professional should come take a look at.
That is a perfect way to set this entire conversation up right there. And I think so many of our people notice maybe a little bit of mold, or they moved into a new house or a new apartment. And, I know Kimberly has shared about this, one of our practitioners, that she has an anaphylaxis level reaction to mold. And so literally, like, she breaks out in hives, and, it's one of those things, like, not everyone has that level of a reaction to know for sure it's in the space. But we're trying to figure out, like, okay, I suspect it. How do I confirm that suspicion, to say the least? So, well, let's get into the next question here, which is, what is the best test for indoor mold? Can I start the testing myself? And just keep an eye out in the chat, guys. We're going to go ahead and link the mold test that we typically recommend.
Yeah, so another juicy question, right? I want to answer the second question first. Yeah, you can start by doing testing yourself, but I would highly not recommend you do that without proper guidance. And here's why. The interpretation is usually the issue with the sampling. It's pretty easy to collect dust or rent a pump where you can take a spore trap sample, not that we're recommending that, or a petri dish sample that you can settle out on the plate. There's a lot of great testing options. The problem is the interpretation. And 9 times out of 10, when I work with people, oftentimes the issue ends up becoming not that they collected the sample, but that they collected the sample in a non-ideal way, or in a way that we don't even know now how to interpret. Was that what did they put it right next to the floor where they walk, and of course they're going to kick particles up, and of course it's going to land in a petri dish. So you see these results come back on your petri dish, and you have a limbic triggering response in a negative way, when really that's just normal background. Interpretation is darn near more important than the test itself if you lack that. So I definitely would say, yes, you can, but do it with guidance. You don't have to hire somebody for $3,000 or more to come out and test your home. It would be nice. There are some really good people out there that do really amazing work. And it does cost a lot of money because you're paying for that person's time, money, and energy, experience, and the testing. But there's a lot of people that can't afford that. There's a lot of people I work with. And it's one of those things where virtual consultations come into hand, because we can guide you, save you a ton of money, at least initially, until we help identify, is there something bigger going on? Because why do we have to gut the house if there's not even really evidence that there's a problem to begin with? You're just more curious about whether you're having a mold exposure. Now, to the question about what is the best test for indoor mold, it's a great question. It's also a trick question. Not that it was meant that way, because it has to do with it depends on what question we're trying to answer. Are we trying to see what molds will grow and be viable because we're just worried about pathogenic disease like aspergillosis growing in your lungs? Well, maybe the best test then would be some petri dishes. If it was, well, no, Mike, I heard this thing about like mold fragments like that. I heard something that you said a while ago, like studies that say every one mold spore, there's anywhere from 300 to 1,000 fragments, something like that. You'd be right. The studies show that there's way more fragments. Well, petri dish sampling is not going to identify that. Spore trap sampling is not going to identify that. But MSQ PCR, some people might know that more generically as an ERMI sample, which I know we're going to talk about, could be the better test to take. In reality, when you're working with a professional, just like you are with a clinician, they're going to be taking different types of samples depending on the questions trying to be asked and the budget we're working with, to raise the bar of level of confidence of that there is or isn't something going on. So DIY, if I was forced to make a decision, I'm biased and I lean towards MSQ PCR testing, because it's like anything. If you've done something 10,000 times, you get pretty good at it. And I do think it is one of the best tests by itself, but it does lack and it's expensive. And so petri dishes can be a great option, but you can't hang your hat on any one test. And that's the problem is you have to you should work with an IEP who can guide you through that process. And the other thing to consider, it's not really directly part of this question, but very much about what to test and how to test, is what's your clinician doing? Are they following the Shoemaker protocol? Because if they are following that protocol, you definitely have certain minimums you want to test. Are they following another modality of treatment and assessment that says, well, my doctor says that they're looking, according to their treatment, they need to see this result, like colony forming units from a petri dish. Okay, well, we need to know that. But as an inspector, it's really going to boil down to their knowledge and experience of how to test the environment, and also how to interpret the results. And I can't wait to talk about the fact that testing is only one piece of the pie. When we interpret the results, we're not blind to the visual evidence and the historic evidence we're finding. In fact, that is usually what ultimately makes me can come to a conclusion about what my opinion is regarding that particular environment.
That's really good. That is really, really good. And I think even the way this question has been kind of formed, if you will, is, we have so many people in our community that are looking for the best thing, or maybe the magic pill, right? Like, how do
why
I
not? Right.
know for sure? And I love that you asked and specifically pointed out from a guide by the side to say, hey, what is your functional doctor? What's your practitioner? What's your clinician looking for? So you don't just test to test, but you're testing to gather the right information to take action. And that is so key in this process. Thank you. There's yes, and yes. That's exactly what it's about around here. All right, well, let's get into this next one. This is a good one. All right, what are the red flags on an ERMI, especially in cases involving chronic illness or very sensitive individuals? I mean, gosh, if that's not our community, I don't know what is. Ooh, we've got so much going on, and as I take a deep breath, everyone just take a deep breath. Actually, we probably should just all collectively take a deep breath, because this is a challenging topic, and we know it is. So let's talk about some of these red flags and how you would navigate this, especially considering you've had your own health.
Yeah, sure. No, great question, and deserves some answers, right? I've collected thousands of ERMI samples in my career. Worked with over 6,800 clients. I have a publication that I did with EPA regarding ERMI samples, and one of the top labs that does the analysis, Mycometrics, and there's a lot of great labs out there. I don't know that, again, I love this question. I'm salivating, right? Like it's dinner time right now, because it's such a juicy, deserving question. It's also tricky because I don't know that we would use the term red flags. Okay, fine. Let me humor it. Are there outliers where we get something back where someone takes a sample? Let's say it's a basement, there's mold hidden everywhere, and it comes back with like 1,000 count of Stachybotrys, 1,000 count of Chaetonium, and multiple thousands of counts of various Aspergillus and Penicillium species? Sure, I'd say that's a red flag. And are there other, and I use gradients of the flag colors, like a pink color, like between yellow and red? Yeah, there's many. Yellow flags, and I don't mean to talk semantics here, but I love it's how we think about things, right? Is there evidence in the ERMI sample that would suggest that, hey, something might be going on here? What I will tell you is we do not look at the ERMI score. The ERMI score wasn't designed for somebody with MCAS. It was an epidemiological study that was not specific to an illness, but just a general condition of homes, and associating that with like asthma and allergy response type stuff. So here's my point. Yeah, I think when I was an IEP, I looked at one yesterday, and I saw a group of, I had an outdoor control sample, which is another part of this question is what's normal for your background? What might look like a red flag in Tucson, Arizona, might not be a red flag in Maui. And one example of that is the mold species Aspergillus penicillioides, which happens to be one of the hurts me too molds that Dr. Shoemaker looks at, the first one on his panel of 5. And that particular mold species is very common in hot, humid climates. And so is it a red flag for water damage building or a yellow flag for water damage building? I don't know. I don't think it really is. It can be, right? I mean, it can still grow, but it's not the best indicator. I think what we talk about flags, I think what we're talking about is you need to work with an IEP who can help and compare the data and look for rank order comparisons, look for indicator species like Chaetonium globosum, Stachybotrys shatarum, Aspergillus versicolor, Penicillium crustosum, Aspergillus restrictus. There's a number of them, and it really depends on the climate, because some of those are normal outdoors, and understanding what your reference is to cue it up. I think if if somebody was to ask the question this way, Mike, is there any health-based indicator scoring system that I could use as a guide, not the all-seeing eye, not the conclusion, not that I'm going to stop looking or I'm going to definitely look, just a general screening tool? I would defer to the Hurts Me Too score from Dr. Richie Shoemaker. The only reason I say that is in respect to there's different illnesses like MCAS and everything else, is that it's the only health-based indicator mold that we're aware of or scoring system that could provide the layperson who didn't or isn't able to work with an IEP with a general guide. So you get a Hurts Me score of a 10 or less for somebody with case-defined CIRS. That's an indicator that this environment might be safe enough. Is it all seen? Is it perfect? No, of course it's not. There's not one test. You could spend a $500,000 in testing in your home. You're not getting a guarantee. You get a lot of good data points. I'll give you that. That would be fun. But it's not a guarantee because of the nature of how mold's everywhere and how our homes communicate. So I would say is if you're going to do an ERMI, do yourself a favor. As somebody who's been there on both sides, don't even have to work with me. It's not a plug to work with Mike. Don't go on social media and ask people, especially folks who they all mean develop. Most people mean they come from a great place, but don't ask them to interpret it for you or listen to the, oh, you definitely have a problem, you definitely don't. Because in a lot of cases, many of the molds that are on the sample result that you might assume indicates an obvious problem for an inside exposure, an inside source, or maybe something in the crawl space or the ductwork or the attic, in fact, is common outdoor. Cladosporium sphaerosphaeronum, Aerobasidium polulens, and a host of other ones are common outdoor, but yet they're listed on the group 1 water damage indicator molds. We are giving this ERMI steering wheel to kids that would be lay people who shouldn't be interpreting it. And it's not your fault if you've done this. Our industry has made it to where you can, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, take the sample and it's just fine. It's whatever. We are seeing more issues with misinterpretation than we are seeing useful. But rest assured, to keep it simple, if I could take all that and summarize it into 30 seconds, is if you're looking at an ERMI sample, pay attention to some of the hydrophilic molds like Chaetonium globosum, Stachybotrys shatarum, some of the less hydrophilic water-loving molds like Aspergillus versicolor, Aspergillus restrictus, Penicillium crustosum, and use as a general guide are they elevated. Keep in mind there could be other mold species that I didn't mention that are elevated that showing an obvious or strong evidence yellow flag of exposure, and that you should never stop there. Slow down, work with an IEP. There's many of them that offer virtual guidance, somebody that you trust, and let them help determine what next steps are. Because the last thing I want to see, you might be saying, where's all this coming from? It's coming from a place of, I've seen too many people jump on a roller coaster ride they didn't need to go on. They've thrown out all kinds of things. They've gotten in divorces. And when you look back at their situation, there's some that are bad. I mean, we've seen some bad ones, you might imagine. But in a lot of cases, it was so manageable and it was so easy. And that momentum of fear and concern and, well, I went on a social media site and these people are credible and they're saying they're the top contributor on Facebook, so they must be good. And then you're like, well, no, they're not really saying how they should say it. In context, this might just be normal background. Deeper conversations, Christina, I know we could have, but that's the best way I can answer this one. It's such a good question, but a bit tricky.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think even just as I'm hearing you say it, because I've wondered sometimes if some of the places I've lived or visited or even could potentially, I'll want to be moving here in the next like 6 months or whatever and living closer to my parents again in Michigan. And I think, okay, I've been in an environment that's been safe. Gosh, I couldn't imagine like buying a house and then discovering it has a mold problem, right?
Well, Christina, real quick on the ERMI score.
Yeah.
And I should have said this earlier, is a classic example is this. People might be able to resonate with this.
Yeah.
Again, the outliers where the numbers are really high and maybe it correlates to musty smell or damage, no one's going to argue that. It looks like there's a problem. What we're really talking about are the gray areas, the light gray areas. Like, oh, there's nothing really obvious, but the ERMI is a little bit, or not the score, but it just looks a little bit gnarly. And there's that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 species. We're not looking for non-detect. If you get a result that says non-detect on every one, that means you didn't take a sample or there was serious inhibition, which usually labs are good at identifying. Inhibition meaning things that can give you a false negative. That being said, if you look at how the scoring system on an ERMI is, just put this in perspective. It's very difficult to get an ERMI score. Remember, we don't follow ERMI score, but just to put this in perspective, if you had an ERMI score of a 0, I know people that would fantasize to get an ERMI score of a 0. Ooh, you got a 0,
Okay.
lucky. Do you know that if you look at the graph of a 0 and where that puts you on the likelihood of having a water or a mold problem, it puts you at 50%?
Oh,
I don't
no
know about
way.
you, but if someone said you have a 50% chance of a monster coming out of your closet tonight, I'm not sleeping. So it's not geared for this type of illness and concern. Dr. Stephen Vesper, the lead at EPA, who led this research program, and all the work that they did, they are pioneers. I mean, we are so thankful in our community for those that are supporters of the MSQ-PCR, which is the analysis method used to analyze an ERMI sample. We wouldn't be where we're at today if it wasn't for folks like him. But
Wow.
that analogy of the 6-year-old behind the steering wheel, our community, and I don't mean mass cell, I don't mean environmental analytics, I mean as a whole, has done a horrible job making it sound like not being responsible enough to say, no, you need to tell that 6-year-old, maybe we'll say it's a 12-year-old for those who want to get hyper analytical like me. Fine, the 12-year-old, maybe they can drive, but did you give them the proper guidance? Did you tell them how to apply the brake, when to apply the brake, when to interpret this as a problem or a threat? The answer is usually not. We just threw it at you and said, here, give us our money. And that is a problem. Problem is there's no mold police that are going to knock on the doors of these laboratories, these marketing companies that are making money. And I don't mean to say that everything's nefarious and everything's, it's the man against you. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm
Right.
talking about is that there's just a lack of governing, and there should be more to really help honor the patient's time, money, and energy. I don't think we're always honoring any of those when we blindly have people take samples without proper education and guidance of how to collect them and how to interpret them. That's why folks like me have jobs. That's one of the things we do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when you were saying that, I was just envisioning people taking their ERMI test results and going to Reddit and posting it in a thread and looking for resources and next steps
Yeah.
and
And you'll
you
get
get
them.
it.
You'll get plenty.
Oh, I'm sure. And I'm sure they vary in feedback. You never, I'm one of those people that if I ask for advice from someone, I always like to quantify who that advice is from. What is their
Yeah.
skill set? What is their expertise? Because if you ask, someone that, if you were to ask me about the test results, I'm going to have no clue. I would be like, 0 sounds like a good score. But as you just shared, 0 is not a good score,
Well, no. And forgive me, I should have prefaced. 0
oh,
might be a fantastic score. The
oh,
point
okay.
is the irony of how difficult the scoring is even to get a 0, and yet on the scoring of the ERMI interpretation will
Okay.
have you at 50% a mold problem. And it was just to show the irony of many of you who've collected samples. If you've done an ERMI before, you've gotten an ERMI score, right? And how many of them have been less than a 0?
Yeah.
I bet you a majority of yours has been at least a 3 or higher, 15,
Okay.
20. And the irony is even if you got a 0, you good with that? And
Mm,
so
okay.
what I'm telling you is that a 15 might be good.
Okay.
A 0
So
might be good.
I'm going to do this for sake of an exercise. So
Yeah.
if you guys have ever taken an ERMI test, go ahead and put it in the chat. Just say, yes, I've taken the ERMI, or write ERMI, ERMI. I took the test. Just go ahead and put it in there. And then if you did, we want to hear what your score is. So this will be a fun kind of social experiment for us to see what those numbers are and how they vary. And I think, again, just dispelling the lie from the truth. We can do
Yeah.
that in this kind of moment, so we can kind of see where the community's at and what everyone has interacted with. But this is such a fun topic and conversation, and this is off the cuff. This is not in the questions, but I just want to ask because I don't know the answer to this question as a newbie to this space. So if I decided I wanted to step into the testing process and I wanted to hire an IEP, I know like I can go to the website and I can set up like a consultation call because I've seen like that information on your website and stuff before. But how, like, if we get this question all the time in the functional kind of naturopathy space, how much money is it going to cost? How, it's not just about the appointment, but it's about the supplements, it's about the testing kits, it's about the timelines, So if someone is just like looking to just dip their toe in the water and start this initial kind of process with someone like yourself, whether they're here in the US or even internationally. What, like, do you mind sharing like a dollar amount or a range just so they have context? I think
Yeah.
it's good to know.
Happy to. I
Okay.
always tell people, and I do mean this, I've truly been, Christina, blessed with work. And it really makes it easy for me to, because of that, to be more authentic, to be more that's my nature anyway, but it makes it easier to be truthful and wanting to truly just be a beacon of truth and navigation. Because there
Yeah,
is so much out there. Everyone's a professional. If you know how to make a TikTok video or an Instagram video, you're a professional now. And that's a
sure.
problem because it's hard to discern the real professionals from just the people that want to get clicks or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I know, because our community is so small, that on average you're going to spend anywhere from, say, about 180 to $350 an hour working with a knowledgeable IEP who has the experience to walk you through. Now the question is okay, fine, there's the hourly rate range. What about the hours? Mine consultations are normally 60 minutes to 90 minutes. And some of that time might be billed in the documents you send me, right? Because a lot of times when the people get to me, I'm not their first call. I'm usually the ones after they've been frustrated from the nonstop going for spending $20,000 on a known inspector, and they tell you to rip out everything in the house, and that's freaking them and their husband out. So they go to us for a second opinion. Is that I might spend 20 minutes doing document review as part of that time. Now, there might be
Okay.
follow-up. What if we have an action plan for you? What if it's like, well, let's have you do this first, and then we'll do a 20-minute consultation. Maybe you're going to spend 160, 200, maybe a little bit more at that session to follow up. At all said and done, you might spend somewhere on average between $200 to $1,000 through multiple sessions, one to multiple, right? Sessions where this IEP, because it's a virtual consultation, is guiding you through the process. Of course, we would rather you have a boots on the ground that it's knowledgeable. But for many of you listening, you either don't know of a local person or there isn't a local person. And in order to get a person, you're talking flight, travel, and the added cost. Now, maybe if you're blessed with an income and you are in a place of where you can hire that, great, good for you. There's plenty of those people out there. There's more people that can't afford that. So I would say consider that, and just know that virtual consultations are never meant to replace the same knowledgeable person boots on the ground. It's meant to supplement, it's meant to educate, it's meant to prime you, because a lot of times it's like, Mike, I'm having a problem with my spouse. He or she loves me. I'm going to pick on the guys because normally it's the guys who are not on the same page with the spouse. And maybe with the best of intentions, they think you're crazy, you've been ghosted, all those things that we talked about in the beginning that you mentioned, rather,
Yeah.
is those spouses need to be heard. This is the problem, is it ends up being a counseling session for the first 20, 30 minutes because they think, and I don't think, they think you're crazy or just off the rails. Yeah, you're right about this one thing, but the other 9 things you're crazy about. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm saying your spouse, have you ever felt this way? But they need to be heard too, because they're like a kid who's shouting their emotions and they don't know how to communicate it, because it shouldn't be you're crazy. It could be this is how I'm feeling. And so it been a counseling session. And what I have found is when you let the spouse talk and let them feel heard legitimately and recognize the aspects that are also true, you can find that all of a sudden you're both on the same page. And I'll tell you what, it sure helps to be on the same page before you drop serious money to have an actual boots on the ground inspector come out there. Because I've been on both cases. I've been on it where you show up to a visit and the husband, it's usually the husband. Sometimes it's the wife. I get it. But it's usually he's in the corner, he's in his office, he's very dismissive. If he is there, he's sitting with his arms folded, not because it's cold inside. And it's only after letting them feel heard that process. So the whole thing about virtual, that's and the only reason I bring that up is that's probably top 3 values as well, is getting everybody on the same page of what's going on, not to solve world peace, not to remediate your crawl space that may need to be remediated, but to get you pointed in the right direction with resources, or at least dealing with the lack of resources and then identifying what options you might have to address your situation.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good. Oh, I love that you're just kind of getting to the heart of the matter today and really addressing what is probably a massive pain point in marriages and relationships all over the world battling this? Because I'm actually curious, and I'm just asking a question offhand, but like, is there a percentage, like I'm a nerd, I like statistics, I like data. Is there a percentage of like people, let's just say in the United States, that probably have mold in their house, that this is a very real reality for in this day and age?
If you live on Earth, there's 100% chance that you have mold in your home. I know that's not what you meant. Want to know, is there mold growing or grew in your home? I'd say if it's wood construction framing, it's probably more like 95 to 100%, because of course there's going to be wood on framing and stuff like that. Don't worry. None of our trigger points should be going off just yet. Then I think the other question is, well, what's the chances? What do we define as mold a problem in your house? Do we mean the topical growth that's occurred in your tiled shower because you use it and that's normal, or in the sink drains, which you're going to have mold and bacteria in there? You're never going to get rid of all that, or else you'll have to change out your plumbing or clean it once a month. Raise your hand if you're cleaning out the plumbing drain lines underneath your sinks in your house. If you raise your hand, you're probably the only person that's raising your hand right now. Here's my point is it's how we define it. Now, I think in a more traditional sense, if we're saying what's the percentage, just gut feel, yeah, there's different numbers. You can see like the World Health Organization, and everyone flirts around like 30 to 50%. I think the reality is if the house has been around long enough, it eventually will go up and up and up until it's darn near a guarantee you're going to have a leak, a roof leak, plumbing leak, a flood, and that sort of thing. I would say that the real question is what's going on as a result of all of that? Does your house reflect normal fungal ecology, meaning normal background based off of where you live and the time of year? Or does it look like there's an extra spike of something going on? Yeah, Mike, we had a leak. It was 10 years ago, but it was underneath the kitchen sink cabinet. We came home from vacation. It leaked for a couple weeks. The bottom shelf was bowed out. And when I took an ERMI sample, I'm making this up, but a couple years later, because we kind of started wondering about it, I noticed that there was, because I had some IEP guide me through the proper sampling process, I noticed that the kitchen zone that we sampled had an uptick of 2 or 3 molds that stood out like a sore thumb compared to the other zones we took in our outdoor reference. Well, gee whiz, maybe that's coming from that kitchen sink area. Now, that's a real easy example, by the way, but that's my point is you might notice that. And in that case, you could say, wow, it looks like there's a problem. So I think that we don't all have active mold growing problems. That might be a much lower number, but no one's really studied that. And I think it's really difficult because the next hurricane could change that. Think about the folks in the Southeast and all that going on right now and all that and all of that. I think what we have to come to the realization is that our homes aren't glass bubbles. And it's more about, sure, cut the cancer, AKA the mold sources whenever you can, but it's not going to be perfect. And it was never intended to be perfect. And we need to do a better job communicating that and learning more because we don't have all the answers. One of the questions someone's going to naturally ask is, well, how do I know when to stop? Should I gut the whole house? Well, no, that's not realistic. But, you're not avoiding total mold. If you're avoiding total mold, you're not living on Earth. And you need to have some exposure. I don't mean elevated. I don't mean in a moldy crawl space. But it's not zero exposure because your body does, just like anything else, it creates an immune system and it creates adaptive responses. And then it's correcting your body and when it needs help, where it needs help, or if you have an innate immune system problem like CIRS, that's one of the case things about it is that your body doesn't detox properly, blah, blah, blah. Then yeah, of course you're going to need help. And maybe you do want to have a cleaner house temporarily than the average home. No problem. But what we got to stay away from is this idea that, well, there it is. There's mold everywhere and I am screwed. It's no, you're not screwed. Your body is resilient and we will find a way to minimize it. But we have to be honest with our audience too, and not be afraid to say how it probably is. And in many homes, you're going to have some mold source somewhere, but it may not even be communicating at a level that you could even detect both olfactory, like I smell it, or a response with my rashes on my arms, or a test sample result. We need to start to tackle these tougher, harder to discuss topics as we go and continue our discussions in the future, because I think that the community has created a discussion that only leads to one solution, which isn't a solution, which is to live on a glass bubble in Mars.
Right. And the reality is, I mean, especially within our community, we have a lot of individuals that they can't afford to move out. They can't afford to remediate. They can barely afford to test. And so they're forced to live in these non-glass house environments. That is science fiction for them. It's not real life, it's not reality, and it's not possible. So I know we've got just a couple minutes left. So how about we do some rapid fire questions? Sound good?
Yeah, we can. Yeah. And I got,
All right.
I got another got 8-10 minutes. So I'm good. Just FYI.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure we get through all the things that we can today. All right, this next question, which is a good one, because I know this is something that came up with Beth. I think there was actually some conversations with Dr. Neil Nathan and mycotoxins. And she, here's someone that's an expert in this space, right? That knows all the things to know, that has guided so many people. And she ended up with an issue. I think, Kathleen King recently purchased, was it Kathleen King? I think recently purchased a house, or someone we were talking with. Let me not speak incorrectly. Sorry. Someone we were speaking with, one of our friends in this community, purchased a house and it had mold in it. Brand new house.
Yeah.
So here, like, how, if they have a budget, how do they test their HVAC duct systems, and what do they do if it's positive? I feel like you've kind of answered this already, but I'd love for you to answer again.
Sure. I loved how you primered it by saying if they have the budget. That makes it much easier. You hire that IEP to come out there and take a look and do a visual assessment of if you have air conditioning. So that air conditioning is technically heat and cooling, but if you have that AC part that actually performs the cooling in your home, then you likely have an evaporator coil. That's that little finned triangle typically that air goes through and cools down the air. As a process, it will drip water. So you check in there because you could have microbial growth in the drain pan, on the fins, within the housing, and even in the plenum that's beyond the coil where the air blows into to be distributed through your house. There could be growth there. Testing the ducts, it depends on what we're trying to accomplish. If it's a matter of saying, I opened up my evaporator coil and I see that there's mold or suspect mold, and I just want to confirm that it is mold. We don't care about the species. You can just do a swab sample. In fact, again, I'm not trying to over promote DIY, but Immunolytics has these kits that you can do for $36. I think 40 something with shipping. You can do a little swab and just identify that it is mold or does not appear to be mold. And in that situation, the whole thing is, what do I do if it's positive? Well, in that one scenario that I described, and there's thousands of scenarios, right, you could talk about what's the cost to clean the system. And then the system's just the unit itself, like the furnace, the air handler. It's not the condensing unit outside. That doesn't have anything to do with the air. That just pumps the freon. So you don't have to clean that. But then, of course, the ductwork comes up, right? Like, what do we do about the duct? Right. Many people have flexible, that accordion-shaped ducts that they have throughout their attic or maybe in the crawl space. If we sense that there's mold growth in the ducts, we're going to tell you to replace it. The industry standards, the guidelines would promote the same idea. If it's metal duct, if it's not lined with insulation, usually it can be cleaned because it's a non-porous surface. Where it becomes a gray area is the difference between mold growth and settled contamination, and to what degree. And it is absolutely a judgment call, which doesn't just take into the consideration what the IEP interprets, but also your budget. I've had people that are like, I have no money. But I do want to clean my ducts, and I don't want to spray chemicals. We're not trying to kill the mold. We're trying to physically remove it. And we'll talk about options like RotoBrush or other things. It's not perfect. There's going to be people that love RotoBrush that heard this, and people say, oh, they're inadequate. We've solved this one thing. The concept is what I'm trying to tell you is physically removing and cleaning to try to see if you can salvage it. Because let's remember, ductwork is not designed to be a sterile operating surface. It is like carpet, and you don't throw away your carpet once a week because stuff settles in it. You will typically, when you do, clean the carpet. Ducts are the same way. You try to clean it, but if it's positive, you do definitely want to slow down and say, okay, is this something that I clean or is it something that I replace? Because it is tricky to clean ducts. That is an absolute true statement. And for those of you with the budget, you might just feel more at peace if I just replace the ductwork. Sometimes that's the best option, Christina. Sometimes it's just too expensive and we have to look at alternatives.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. That's such a great answer, and it's something I've actually been thinking about in my own life, because I just turned the heat on for the first time, and I started to notice certain symptoms peak since I turned my heat on. But I'm in an apartment, right? So there's certain limitations to my scenario, and so I've been just wondering and processing through some of these different conversations as a renter versus like family and friends that are homeowners, and like how to navigate this process. But in either way, it sounds like the IEP is the conversation to go, and to get whoever is your team on board for that process. Well, I know we've joked and we've mentioned crawl spaces, and I feel like crawl spaces are like the dirty word of the environmental mold space. Everyone always is like, oh, crawl spaces. But is it possible to actually remediate a crawl space? Is there hope for crawl spaces as a whole?
Yeah, without a doubt. Crawl spaces can be the petri dish. They are the low-hanging fruit when you have one. You don't need standing water and a fishing license to justify having a mold problem in your crawl space. But yeah, there are options. The Cadillac version, right, is to correct drainage, moisture issues. Typically, if hopefully outside of the crawl space area, some people will add in sump pumps on the inside. They'll lay down some sort of a moisture vapor barrier, thicker material to where if you need to service something in the crawl space in the future, you're not going to tear it. It's going to be mechanically fastened and sealed around the perimeter stem wall of the home. These are just kind of easy low-hanging fruit examples. And of course, you're going to dehumidify it too. Some people are like, well, I just put in the plastic to keep the moisture out. Why do I need to dehumidify it? Well, you live in Miami, Florida, or any sort of hot, humid climate, or even a humid climate, you're not going to be able to negotiate all of that moisture coming in. So that's the Cadillac version. And this is 30,000 foot SR71 going Mach 3 over this topic. But you don't have to feel like you have to do that if budget's an issue. Just understand, let's have some real talk, that there's opportunity cost. You don't or can't spend that much money. Let's deal with that reality. And let's have you do the lesser option. Lesser option would be, well, can we seal off the crawl space? There's a subfloor. I'm in the crawl space. I'm on the soil. I'm looking up. There's a subfloor. That's where you are on your main floor up above. Can I seal the gaps and cracks up? Yeah, the answer is you can. Can I maybe put a crawl space fan to promote a pressure differential, although it's not really going to be significant, but maybe to help evacuate elevated moisture in my crawl space to make it a little bit better? Crawl space fan is pennies on the dollars compared to the Cadillac version. Yes, you can. At the end of the day, there are all sorts of solutions you can do, but absolutely is a legitimate focus point of saying, if I have a mold problem, I definitely want to be or I think I do, definitely want to be looking in the crawl space, because in my experience, when you have a crawl space, that's top 1 or 2.
And this is, I'm going to ask a ridiculous question, but I'm going to ask as a non-homeowner, like, is it possible to have homes without crawl spaces? I don't even know.
Did you say, is it possible to have mold growth with, or?
No, like, is it possible to have a home without a crawl space?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My house,
Okay.
for example, that's not a silly question at all. My house is a concrete slab, so it's concrete, and then my house is on top of it. Some people have their basements, but of course, the basement floor might be concrete. So there's all sorts of options out there, but unfortunately, crawl spaces are fairly common in a lot of places where you wouldn't want them to be, but we understand why they're there. From a mold bacteria condition conducive for that type of growth, we don't like them, and they're challenging.
Yeah, it's so interesting that the housing industry, there's obviously design reasons why this is a chosen path. But,
yes.
I think as we've had some of these like bigger dialogues with like Dr. Nathan about just toxic, food and culture and environmental things, it makes you really kind of go back to like, oh, wow, these are things we've been exposed to for so long that are just kind of part of our entire process in our world. So let me not get on the soapbox. Let me stay in my lane. All right, let's get to this next one. So, all right, let's say someone actually has had the conversation with you and it's been determined that they need to do some level of mold remediation. Can they do it themselves? Is that an option? And like talk us through that. So let's talk through. It's a yes for remediation. That's needed.
Yeah. So the easy answer, everyone, would be to say, yes, please leave during remediation. The why would be because, well, maybe there'll be some temporary exposure while they're doing the remediation, or you might just not like the noise. If you've ever been in a remediation project, all the noise from the equipment that's running day and night, you might not get a good night's sleep, or not any better anyways. We can talk more about that a little bit deeper after I answer the second one. Can I do it by yourself? Yeah, sure you can. But it's a trick question, right? Like if you do it, are you going to have exposure issues? Are you not going to do an adequate job? There are resources I know that are at the end of your slides that we'll bring up with ways you can educate yourself to say, like, what are the professionals doing? That being said, I wouldn't advise it. We save myself for the most extreme situations for the people who are in rural areas, or they just don't have anybody that's good and that's been vetted to kind of verify that. And in which case, you definitely want to have an IEP who is guiding you, educating you, giving you the best practices, that sort of thing. I think on the mold thing, when you leave the house, I think more of it's the convenience, because a lot of times you're doing whole house cleaning and
Mm.
you're just in the way. But no, we've had plenty of projects, Christina, where people have stayed because of the lack of options, and you just kind of deal with it depending on the circumstance, depending on what's affected, what's not affected. Maybe have like I hate this term because it's triggering, but a safe room, or room where we can really kind of keep it clean so you have a place to go. Because it's really, the goal here is about minimizing filling your bucket up with unwanted toxins and contaminants, not looking for the perfect lack of exposure. Again, that doesn't really exist, especially if you want to get critical with defining what exposure really means.
Yeah, and again, without knowing the mechanics of it, but I'm sure if like Kimberly was on this call right now, or one of our other practitioners, they would tell you, talk to your practitioner and be aware of that process and how it would affect your health.
Yeah.
So if there are, the uptick, for example, Kimberly used this example the other day. It was so good. And she was talking about like when you utilize binders are like if you were to take a trash bag of like just gunk, and you're trying to detox from mold, and you've got it all in that trash bag, and then you drag that trash bag through your gut, basically.
Right.
And so I would imagine if Kimberly was here right now, she would encourage you to check in with someone like herself, someone like our clinic team, and check in with your practitioner and get the health recommendations to supplement, to support, and ensure that you have a safe process along with the remediation. Because you don't want to, like you said, like that does cause additional exposure, especially if it's a DIY. I have
Oh
no
yeah.
doubt.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's
Nothing
complicated, right,
like,
Christina? Because maybe it's not the actual patient, maybe it's a friend of the family, maybe it's whoever, but there's a lot of concerns. And the last thing you want to do is complicate the project and make it way worse. And the irony is we also see a lot of jobs where the patient ends up spending more money than if they just would have hired a professional. And their whole point was try to save money. Now they're having to redo a lot of the things that they did because they thought it was the easiest 1, 2, 3.
yeah, that makes sense. That yes, trying to save a couple of dollars, but ending up spending 10x the budget. That makes
Yep.
sense. Well, we've got two last questions here. So this one is, how do I decide what belongings to throw out or keep? So again, just going in the whole remediation conversation. And let's say, for example, they store them. Do they eventually become safe after a mycotoxin or a mold exposure? How does that work?
Yeah.
Like, I have not the slightest idea. So I'd love for you to speak to this one.
Probably one of my next favorite questions has to do, of course, with that. I think when it comes to throwing away or not throwing away, it ends up being definitely a case by case situation. There's not going to be an answer that is responsible that you can get that's always going to say yes, throw it away, or no, always clean it and salvage it. ICI on their Get Resources page actually has a great article document on keep or toss and that sort of thing. And just to give you the perspective, I know that the community generally tends towards throwing everything away. I get it, right? I mean, are we talking about the standard curve of things like mold growing on your sofa or your books? Or are we talking about the outliers? I think we're talking about the outliers because most people aren't going to argue throwing out porous items that have physical mold growth on them. Obviously, if it's an item of value like the family photo album, we're not going to tell you to throw it away. I might tell you to seal it, put it in a plastic bin container or vacuum sealed bag, maybe take it to a specialty cleaner to minimize what's on it, to lower the exposure so that you still can have something that means something to you. But
Yeah.
automatically throwing it away, no. You don't have to throw away that $4,000 avocado mattress that you bought a year ago because it's on the main floor and you had a mold problem in your basement. Should you be
Yeah.
concerned about there possibly being some exposure and be prudent and proactive? Absolutely. I didn't say you should ignore it. But the automatic throw it out, that's the problem. Because it's not just that you fine, you want to err on the side of caution, go for it. I will put my name next to it. Wanted to be extra careful, and I get it. What I don't want to do is see people calibrating their mindset to treating mold like it's plutonium.
Mm.
And I want that to resonate for people for just a second. Understand what I'm saying is I get exposure. Anybody gets exposure, it's me. But it's this issue of the community making you feel like mold is such an issue that your automatic response is it's an issue, it's a fear, I have to get rid of it. That, in my experience, is causing more headache in the journey for you to recover than the actual exposure itself. And I mean that. And so what can we do? We test it. You can sample it. Tests have limitations. And is it worth sampling a $50 pillow with a $300 ERMI? Probably not. So it's this whole thing of it's a case by case situation. And to answer that second question, yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of there was another question I know we're not asking today, but it was around the whole idea of half-lives and mycotoxins, and it kind of gets into a piece of that. I think if something's contaminated, legitimate, let's just say we know it is,
Yeah.
not growth, but something settled on it. And maybe the mast cell community would love to hear this part. This is one of my favorite things, if I can get the words out, is if it's a particle, you definitely want to remove, physically vacuum, damp wipe, dry wipe. There's all these methods you would use depending on the item. And again, we can still say, hey, maybe don't bring the items back into the home until you've done the proper remediation and clean, and you verified that you're improving. Because the last thing you want to do is on a day that you're having a bad day is go, oh man, it's that $50 pillow. Like, you don't want to blame it on something, even though it might not be because of that item.
Yeah.
And being hyper aware and having to work on that part of ourselves too is another eye opener. I've seen even myself of when I became really worried, I seemed to physically respond with symptomatic responses, and in the same exact exposure after correcting not changing my diet, not changing anything in the home, not changing, I added an extra air filtration device in my home, all of a sudden a lot of the symptoms went away. And we see this time and time again, and it's well documented. But
Wow.
I will say that mycotoxins have relatively short half-lives. You can look up the literature online. There's way more literature on mycotoxins in blood and animal studies. But there are a few that are floating around that have to do with the environment, like agricultural studies and mycotoxins. And what you'll find is that they are really short. There are some that would stretch out to almost a year, but most of them are days, weeks, that sort of thing for their half-life, which suggests that if you have a picture frame that you had in storage 6 years ago, and this is a tip of the hat to one of the questions I saw on before this interview, that likely it's broken down to a point where it's very little concern. But you could still have structural contamination that's not just going to dissipate, like spores and fragments that would need to be removed. Because remember, dead or alive, even the EPA agrees with this part, which is amazing. Dead or alive, mold spores, mold fragments can still be allergenic, potentially contain mycotoxins, but we kind of addressed a little bit of that piece, and create that inflammatory response, which is what an allergic response essentially is, but different types of inflammatory responses in our bodies. So we want to physically remove it. What I tell people at the end of the day is, let's see what you're willing to keep and throw away. And I don't mean because from a panic thing. Maybe you've been needing to clean out that closet. Now's the time to do it, because it's not worth the emotional headache that you're going to deal with trying to go through these items. Let's take the items that we know are easy to clean, that are typically the non-porous items, and let's look at the balance. The balance are going to be the items you want to keep that are porous, that you can't throw in a laundry machine too. Because by the way, clothing, linens, those are easy to wash. If it's just settled contamination on them. Studies have shown that. We've seen it. We've interviewed it on IEP radio. We know that stuff is out there. But what we do is we take those items and we put them off to the side, we put them in storage, and we deal with them on a case-by-case basis, Christina, because at the end of the day, we don't want the bed to get in the way of the larger process and the momentum of like, oh, they just get stuck, right? Like they don't do anything because it's so overwhelming. Does not need to be overwhelming. There is a sequence to how you can remove things, keep them temporarily out, clean things, and then test your body, work with your practitioner, your clinician, and say, how am I doing? Like we did all this remediation, this work, and I'm improving. That's amazing. And then you're going to slowly want to reintroduce things back to the home. And I'll end you with this irony. 2 points. Number one, we see this all the time. A lot of people feel better when they hear that. They're like, okay, I don't have to throw everything away. And plus, I have a decision to make. I have time where I can make that decision later, because that's really what people get stuck on, is the decision of having to make the decision. And it's overwhelming because they're thinking about all the porous things they have. It's like, no, you don't have to make that decision now. Just it's all good. The irony of it is even when people get the concept of contamination, how a lot of times it can be cleaned up and other times it cannot. And I want to stress that point. I'll be a cheerleader for that too for a moment. Is that when they get to the finish line of a better home, a cleaner home, and they're feeling better, it's so interesting to watch how people go, you know what? I wanted to keep that, but where I'm at now, heck no, peace out, I'm throwing it out. And I get that part too, but just remember this about mycotoxins. This is the last thing. It's one of the things I wanted to say before. Mycotoxins are tricky because there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of good comments. And I think that there's a lot of sincere concerns and sincere hypothesis that maybe haven't been studied out all the way to verify, I'd like to propose my own hypothesis for folks.
Hmm.
If you're dealing with a mycotoxin exposure, and the concern you've heard is that mycotoxins can bond and get stuck onto an item and you can't remove it. A lot of us have heard that. And so
Yeah.
therefore you can't get rid of it and it's a problem. Well, here's my question for you. If you've taken that item and you've cleaned it, you've washed it, you've done all of these things and you can't remove it, it's not coming off. What's the exposure concern?
Hmm.
You can't get it off. Remember? Oh, so now it's
Yeah.
gonna come off magically when you touch it, but when you did all of those abrasive cleaning techniques, it didn't come off?
Oh,
We have
wow.
to be more realistic about the concern. I understand that nothing's perfect, nothing's 100%, so I'm not talking absolutes right now, but I'm just trying to
Sure.
hypothesis is what's the concern? And also knowing that mycotoxins have half-lives, maybe if you did an honest effort to clean those books and they were in storage for a year, probably not a big concern. That's my
Mm.
hypothesis. I say hypothesis because I too don't have a government grant with $10,000, $100,000 to test the study out. Just having to use some reasonable rationale from what we can part from
Yeah.
different studies that are out there to say, hey, let's honor your exposure concerns, but let's react logically with it and scientifically about it as best we can. And then we can choose to add any other reasons why you want to end up doing what you're doing. Let's not make the first criteria of interpretation an emotional response. And I know it's easy. I've been there. My number one trigger, my number one gene that was the most expressed when I was going through my journey with CIRS, the number one that was the most upregulated was PTSD. So I understand what it's like to be there, which is why I'm such an advocate saying what I'm saying today.
That's so good. Mike, thank you. And if you guys are watching this and it's really spoken to your heart and just kind of hit you as I'm taking that deep breath again. Everybody take a deep breath, just talking about mold, having this almost dialogue about almost that PTSD moment of even going through mediation and the fear and the anxiety and all the different things. We are here ultimately to bring hope, to bring light into dark places. And yes, we know mold often grows in the dark places, but it's one of those things where there is hope. There's an ability to deal with things, and there are some really clear resources and next steps you can take to navigate this process. I love to ask this question and also provide this as a response to our community that are trying to navigate because we get this question all the time. Where do I start? What do I do? I'm feeling overwhelmed. So will you talk us through kind of these three specific things, Michael, and then we'll kind of, I would love to land the plane with some of your final thoughts.
You bet. ICI is a great nonprofit organization. A lot of great things going on right now. One of the big things there is that we have the IEP committee. I chair the committee, and there's a number of talented people that are way smarter than me as part of that organization working together. There's a bunch of 101 documents that are available on that link right there, the resources page. Go take a look at it. The 101s, it's not something that we just crafted at a bar one night and said, here's what our thoughts are. There's been a lot of time, a lot of passion, and a lot of debate of what we felt was a fair way to address things, which is good for you because you're getting some of the brightest minds coming together. So take a look at that. It's a great resource. IEP Radio is my nonprofit. I don't make money. I don't ask for money. I don't even have a place to give money for really education. So a lot of people have come to me, and I've had my own dealings of how can I give back to the community, because there's a lot of folks out there that just can't afford it. They just need some resources. Take a look at IEP Radio. We don't cover every single topic, but you'll find that I'm not doing it for clicks. It's really a resource, including remediation techniques, including topics on testing, what to look for, a good IEP. It's a great free resource. And it's not just a podcast, it's a video cast. So you get to see this beautiful face and whatever we're sharing on the screen. My company is Environmental Analytics. It's a .net, not a .com. Take a look if you're interested in learning more about my services. We'd certainly love to entertain helping you any way we can. And if not, we'll try to send you to a person that we think can as the time allows. We are incredibly blessed to be busy. So those are the top three things. And I don't know if it's appropriate right now to mention the banner. Some people have asked about doing remediation themselves. And so I was talking with Christina earlier, is that SURSX, which is kind of like an offshoot of surviving mold. And let's not be so polarized with camps. I know there's a lot of it's like politics when we talk about Neil Nathan versus Shoemaker versus this doctor versus that. I don't subscribe to that. I think we all can get along and have productive conversations. I've also mentioned ICI. I'm going to mention SURSX right now. CIRSX.com has a wonderful course called Medically Important Remediation 101. I am one of the authors, and we spent over 2 years creating it. My disclaimer is that I do get a royalty fee from that, but I spent over 2 years for free working on this really intense 16-hour course. Why am I bringing it up? I promise you it's not so I get a little check at the end. It's because some people are like, well, if I have to do the work by myself, who can I go to that's credible, that can give me really the best practices fundamentals? That's what this course is about. It's actually designed for mold remediation companies. So take a look at that if you want to. If not, go to all the free resources. The point is we want to provide options to a host of different people that are dealing with different situations. I always recommend doing it with a professional, but I understand there's times when you need other help. So if hopefully that information is useful, and if it's not, feel free to contact me. You can see my website right here.
Absolutely. And you know, if I love the thought that if someone wants to DIY this, who better than to learn from someone like yourself that's been doing this, is experienced, you know the ERMI test inside and out. You've been a part of all these incredible conversations, and most importantly, your heart to give back. And so if this is, you know, if you'd like to learn from an expert, we want to encourage you. And as Beth always says, like, we're not pushy marketing people. That is just not who we are at MassCell 360, but we do clearly have a mission to help our community. And so if that is what you are looking for, we want to support that resource. So Cam will drop that in the chat so you can get in touch with Michael. You can take a look at that course. And of course, we have our own course as well, and I'll share more on that in a minute. But we just, we want to thank you again for your time today. We appreciate you so much for all that you do for our community and for literally changing lives and families all over the world. Like, that's, I mean, you're kind of like we said Dr. Neil Nathan is the mold goat. I love that. So you're our mold superhero. You're helping, you know, be a part of saving probably a lot of people's worlds that are in places of fear and challenge and pain and sickness. And so thank you for that. I'm sure, like, we need like a photo of you in like full hazmat suit one day so we can see like remediation Michael showing up. That would be really fun. Future conversation.
I'll say this, 2 things, if you don't mind, Christina. First of all, thank you. I take the reputation that I have very seriously, and I take it with high responsibility, knowing it's a position of influence and responsibility. I don't take that lightly. I know there's a lot of people that kind of feel like it's a 6-year-old behind an F1 race car and just going nuts. And it means a lot to be a beacon of balance. It's not perfect. I don't bat 1,000. Nobody does. But it's important to me. And I think my track record demonstrates that with the positions that I hold. And again, I don't take that lightly. It means a lot. I will say, it just as a parting comment, is that I think, and this was like kind of our pregame talk a little bit, was that you might have noticed in my responses today that they seem to have a slight towards can do, don't have to throw this away. I was promoting use a professional. That I want to put a little bit of context on that. Guys, there are cheerleaders for fear and worry and anxiety 100, 1,000 to 1 for the cheerleaders for the other truth, which is that it's not as dramatic. I mean, in news, do we hear about all the wonderful things or do we hear about all the bad things? Why is that? It's our nature. And I'm a cheerleader for the other side. I'm the one. There's others, certainly. I would argue that Christina and her team are very much that. And it's not just some sort of, like, when I don't know if it's a trigger word for me, but when I grew up hearing hope, I'd always felt like it's hope, but with a known doom. Like, I know it's going to be doomful for me, but let's just add the word hope so that you feel better right before you crash into that wall. That's not how we mean hope. What we mean is that there is a solution. There is a real one, not something that we just devised, or not something that you can only achieve if you have $100,000 budget. The community is so distorted with facts, and I understand there's different reasons. I understand that not everybody's an evil doer, that there's a lot of, like, they're doing the best they can. But remember, in the 1950s, our argument is we had to convince grandpa that the solution to mold wasn't throwing bleach on it and just saying, no big deal, whatever, suck it up, buttercup, quit being a sissy. We've gone from that vibe of mold exposure to the extreme opposite. of like, no, we're going to educate people. Mold's a serious thing. Well, congratulations. You did it. You made it. You've arrived. You get first place trophy for making that point. Now the problem is that we're still running the race and we're scaring the hell out of people. And it's gone beyond. And if that resonates with you, please understand that's why I was talking in the tone that I was today, is because there's tough situations out there. Many people have to get rid of things. Many people are so sick that it just was better to just press the reset button and just start over again. I get that. I'm not arguing about those points. I'm saying I don't want that to be the standard curve, because it's not. And most of my other colleagues, it's the same exact thing when you're working with a professional. But people are hurting. People are in pain. People don't have cheerleaders. People don't have people to go to and that they can trust. Or someone's got some, alternative, thought. Well, I'm going to be I will be your savior, and I'll give you this package and it'll solve the world. But meanwhile, mold's bad and it causes all these carcinogenic effects, and it does this and it's that. It's like, it's just overstimulating, right? It's like a cheerleader for concern. Where is the cheerleader for hope? There is absolutely hope. Let's remind ourselves that we are being surrounded by mold spores, mold fragments, mycotoxins, bacteria, which we didn't really get into today. We got into all of those that we are surrounded by all of those things, and we call that our normal background. Without it, we wouldn't be here. So it's not about zero exposure. It's about minimizing atypical or elevated exposures so that your body can detox and catch up with itself. And yes, if you're the person that's listening, that's been dealing with this for 30, 40 years, you've heard it, but it's still not whatever, we get it. There's complicated cases out there. And at the end of the day, maybe you're the exception. Maybe you're one of those ones. It still doesn't mean there's not hope. In my experience, when working with people that have been dealing with illness that long, half of the problem was that they weren't getting proper treatment. Half of it was, a third of it was that, or math doesn't really quite add up, but a chunk of it was, they weren't feeling heard. They were being ghosted and other things. And another part of it was that they were ingrained to think a certain way. I'll never get better. Tomorrow's going to be another bad day. Tomorrow's going to be more of an exposure. And, I told you something earlier off screen, and most people who know me know my background. I happen to be a Christian. I believe faith's a big piece, and I respect whatever religion or faith you believe in. It's funny. One of my favorite quotes comes from one that's attributed to Buddha, which is, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. And that is so powerful, because our minds are probably one of the most powerful things. And so it's okay to look at that piece of it and simply ask yourself, am I allowed to have an illness and a sensitivity? Of course, the answer is yes. And may I just be a bit triggered and overwhelmed? And if the answer is yes to that second one, do I have some control on that? I contend the answer is yes, you have some control on that. If not majority control, you have some control. Work on the pieces you can, because even when you do, it's not going to be a perfect road. Every day gets better. Your road to recovery is going to look like this, but your trend is this, and not your trend is that going down. And that's my point. So I hope that connects with you. Please understand there's a lot of good people doing great work out there, and that it's not, if you've gotten stuck in the gloom and doom of this all, that's not reality. I think the reality of it is that your situation might be easier than you think. It might be challenging. And if it is challenging, there's solutions. You don't have to hire a company that's going to charge you $200,000 to solve your problem. So just keep that in mind.
Right. That's so good. And I think, gosh, as you were just saying that, I was just reminded of the aspect of just, we all need to have some form of agency, right? And Beth would always say, slow is fast. And I think that's the heartbeat of really what you're sharing right now, is that reminder to not stay stuck, that you do have that ability to step into the scenario, address it, work through it. So even if that's just emailing an IEP or signing up for a test or evaluating something and just being aware of your surroundings, you don't have to be stuck. And so, I don't know about you, but I'm a words person. I love just the definition of words. And then sometimes just a word is like the perfect bow in a conversation. It just summarizes it. And that word for today that I feel like is resilience. And just that resiliency is really, it's not just about hope, but being able to be resilient. And so the definition of resilience is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties. It's to have a toughness. It even talks about the ability to spring back and elasticity. And so if I could just interject or challenge our community today to, along with hope, pick up some resiliency in your approach to mold. As you've listened to all this content all month long, you've gotten our emails, you've heard about our courses. My hope for you, if you will, my hope for you is to be more resilient. And I do hope that Michael's talk today has brought you that. So with that all being said, any final thoughts, final words? Thank you for pouring out on us today and sharing just so much wisdom. I knew this was going to be a good conversation, but I'm like, woo, we might need to make this a two-part. This was great.
I'm happy to do it. You greased the skids when we had our pregame talk, which I appreciate it. You know, it's such an emotional thing, and I want everybody here to feel like they're being heard, because they are. I think I'm talking to the majority of the masses, but I know that there's a few outliers out there that are like, my situation, man, you don't know, you don't get it. It's like, no, I do. I've been there. I've definitely experienced. I mean, I work with 6,900 clients. I see patterns, and just know, if you're in that situation, that there is hope, even if you don't buy into it yet. We can change gears. If we're going to use like an automotive example, we'll switch gears from 6th gear down to 1st gear. Beth O'Hara's, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that whole thing is that, when you're in the trenches, you don't always see what's in the distance, but other people can see it. And you want to find people you can trust, because you don't know, am I walking the right way? Am I going this way? How should I do it? And it feels overwhelming because you don't feel grounded. It's uncomfortable. It's unnerving. It's scary. Yeah. Welcome to the club. And if you're a seasoned vet in this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You still need to know that you will get out of it, because just like you spent all that time getting yourself to the position, sometimes voluntary, certainly not in other ways, you can get yourself back out. And that's what we're seeing, is we're seeing a lot of that. It's just understanding it and not idolizing it, honoring it, and it is what it is, and deal with it. If it's not this, it would have been something else. I really don't know anybody, including my own family, doesn't have some sort of serious illness or thing that they've either dealt with in their life or are dealing with right now. It's about how we deal with it and how we choose to respond to it. And when it's not automatic, it wasn't automatic for me 2-3 years ago. It's only automatic now because I've put myself in a better place. I've had faith and I've trusted the process, even knowing that when I got done with a prayer or got done with a step, I might not feel the symptomatic benefits of it. And I just knew that I just knew, I actually got pissed off at myself. I was so frustrated because I knew that I might have something going on, but my attitude is not the right way to address it. It's like if you broke your arm, it's easier said than done to be calm, but you have 2 ways you can look at that. You can either freak out and just send off your body into an absolute state of survival mode, or you can do the best you can to hamper it. And I do mean that. And I got so frustrated at myself because I knew all these talking points, but because I was in the trenches, it wasn't easy to get out of it. And one day, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was prayer. Maybe it was some friend that said, "Hey, dude, what's up?" And regardless, it just changed me. And my attitude changed. And it was literally within a month where I started noting incremental improvements. And it's like, wait a second, no new supplements. I'm working in the same place. I'm eating the same cleanse diet that I was. What's up? And it's not like I'm an N equals 1 here. I'm an N equals probably millions or more people, but in our own ways. It's not always about illness and the power of the mind. But if you see the way people think, why are those people kind of having that? So anyways, take away that, and just, if nothing else, just take away that I'm just trying to be your cheerleader for you on that side of it, because quite frankly, speaking of getting tired and upset, I'm upset of seeing the extremeness, and I'm upset seeing the people showing up with tears, brokenness, loss, divorces, bankruptcy. That's what I'm really angry about. And so hopefully this vulnerable conversation was well received to you, because that is absolutely how I meant it.
Well, it definitely was. And if this conversation has impacted you, you felt changed by it, maybe it was that aha moment that you've needed, go ahead, put that in the chat. Please send some kind words and thank yous to Michael. And as always, he is someone that we will shout from the rooftops, that he is an incredible resource. And if you are looking for someone that is a guide in this process, that knows the ins and outs and is going to help you, it's him, it's his team. So go ahead and learn more about him at environmentalanalytics.net, not .com. So go to the .net, and we're just so grateful for you. And we look forward to having you on again in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina.
I can see all your thank yous on the right-hand side of my account. And as you can hear, my voice is a little worn out today. I'm so grateful we recorded that interview the other day when I had more of a voice. Gosh, it was so good. So if you enjoyed that interview with Michael today, him answering all your questions, please do leave a comment. I saw Environmental Analytics, his company, is actually on with us live right now and has been in there answering some of your questions in real time, which thank you to Michael and his team for doing that. I do want to share just a couple of the kind words you guys shared today. Sally said this was definitely helpful and lessened my anxiety about the whole thing. Thank you so much. We echo that, Sally, for sure. Catherine said, beautiful. Lori is sending all the prayers and the hearts. That's amazing. She said she might even be reaching out to you, Michael. So Michael will keep an eye out for your message, Lori. I love that Barbie was saying nervous system reset and faith is anything. We agree for sure. Nervous system reset is so important. Jessica mentioned that she's been praying to God so much over these years, and that's the only reason that you're still here and praying he leads you to figure it out. Well, Jessica, we're standing right there with you. You're not alone. I know I've seen a couple other people in our community mention their family members have been dealing with MCAS or sickness for decades. So please know you're not alone. Please reach out and ask for help if you need it. We will do our best to support you in any way possible. I saw this, you mentioned specifically that, you were moved to tears and you've been exhausted. And if Jessica, if you think Michael's maybe a good fit for you and your budget in the season, reach out to him. Just head on over to his website, Environmental Analytics, and see if he can be a resource for you. I also wanted to just pop this comment in here because I thought this was a good one. It's over on YouTube. So Michael, you probably didn't see it, but Josh said that he's actually a solo consultant in this space, more in the asbestos side of things. So he's wondering if you do training or mentorship, any mold consulting, what would that look like? So Josh, I'm going to tell you, go ahead and go to environmentalanalytics.net. So go to Michael Schrantz's official website. And then there is actually another resource that we mentioned during the show, but I'm going to put it back on the screen now. And this is the actual resource that him and a group of people put together that is basically like a Game Changer Institute that you can get access to. So definitely go and check that out. I think that would be an awesome place to start. And I'm sure just with the kindness in Michael's heart, if you reach out to him directly, he'll help you along the way too. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being a part of this. So appreciate you all. I figure now's probably a good time for us to give away a free course. What do you guys think? Would that be fun? We can give away a free mold course for those of you that have stuck with us all the way to the end here. Sorry, let me fix my graphic. All right, drum roll, please. This is our last one for Mold Month. And the winner is, let me check my notes from our team, Catherine Yassine from Colorado. So congratulations, Catherine, and winning your free digital copy of our Mass Cell 360 Mold Precision Masterclass. This is one of our favorite courses around here. It is like, gosh, other than our nervous system reset course, our reboot course, I should say, this is like the other game-changing course that we've heard so much about over the years. So we would love for you to send us an email to support@masscell360.com, and we will go ahead and grant you instant access to that course. And for those of you that maybe are still interested in checking out the course, you've heard what Michael shared today, you want to learn more from him, we actually have an exclusive bonus in our advanced and our basic level course that is an additional live Q&A with Michael that we did before with him and Beth. We've got a live conversation on gut health and mold with Stephen Wright from Healthy Gut. We've got modules on how to detox your dog Like, there is so much extra stuff in the advanced level course. And so if you've been teetering on whether or not to go basic or advanced, and maybe price was that aspect that you were wrestling with, we want to give you guys an extra gift. It is $50 extra off. So go ahead and go to the link below that Cam is going to post, and you can purchase the advanced level, enter mold 50. So once you add it to the cart, you'll add the mold 50 coupon code, and you'll get that $50 off. So you'll be walking away with our advanced level of the course for the best price you're going to get at all this year, and possibly ever. We're probably going to shift things as the year goes on. So I want to make sure you guys know that's available. Go ahead and take action before midnight tonight, okay? Because our mold month promotion is ending, and we'll be shifting into some exciting new content next week. We're going to be offering you some nervous system support, because I think there's some big stuff happening in our country here in America, right, everybody? And so we probably all need a little bit of nervous system support. We need to calm down a little bit, maybe not be so anxious. So we're going to be having our team join us next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. So we'll be back sharing all the good things with you, and we'll be back with live content every single Tuesday the month of November as well, except for the week of Thanksgiving. I should add that. We are going to take that off and enjoy some rest. So if you guys have any additional questions about our mold course or anything else, again, just shoot us an email, support@masscell360.com. Myself, Jamie, Cam, we're always behind the scenes, and we're here to help you. So whether you're trying to figure out if the clinic is the right fit for you, whether the strategy sessions are the right fit for you, or a course is the right fit for you right now, we are here to be a resource and a solution for you. And in the meantime, you can always enjoy all the free sources on our website. All right. Everyone have a great week. I will see you next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. And until then, be well.